rise again to glory then, soar into the sky. If you stop and see, then you just might believe. We're unstoppable, powerful, enough to beat the odds. If you love me, you will see the flames inside of me.
Welcome back to Seduce Me. We're gonna have a Skype party, apparently. Shh, shh, shh. Have fun tapping those demon asses. Thanks, friend, buddy, pal, chum. Let's just continue. We were in the middle of a war. I walked forward and for my weapon, letting it shine brightly in the... Oops, go away. Please. In the darkness of the forest around us, and temporarily blinding the imps ahead of us. The hilt of my sword materialized in my hand as sharp as the lavender blade jutted out from the handle, glimmering brightly with my energy. I swung it around a bit, remembering the training I went through with it, and steadied myself. The imps who were blinded by my light only for a moment looked back at me and stared as they took note of the weapon I had possessed. With a battle cry, I rushed forward, taking advantage of their blank state. I sprinted forward and carved my sword through an imp, cutting his neck open with my slice, before twirling around and ripping through the imp beside him and effectively cutting him down. Ha! The imps fell and the others... The fimps! The imps fell as the others became shell-shocked at the sight. It must have been a big surprise to see a human cut down 2 of their number, but I wasn't in the mood to let them recover. My body quickly turned in front of the other imps as I swung my weapon once again, slicing open his throat. With a bubbly cry, he fell as well as I rushed forward again toward the castle uncaring. The remaining imps began to quake and step back in fear, most likely never expecting to see a human decimate their companions. Jeez. I wasn't so friendly and merciful, especially in this war, as I lunged forward again and skewered another imp, hearing the steel of my weapon break through his body. My incubus, despite probably being surprised at my carnage, followed as I continued forward, fighting through every imp that came in our way. I had lost count of how many crossed me, but I didn't care. All I cared about was getting to the castle. By the time we reached the end of the forest, there was a slew of dead bodies behind me. I stood at the tree line, panting and feeling waves of adrenaline and lack of energy run through my veins. I panted for air, slowly focusing and calming down, as my energy quickly depleted from the adrenaline-filled high. The weapon in my hand quickly vanished, no longer able to maintain its form without my energy. That was all I could do before my energy was expended in a wave of exhaustion with my body. I began to fall forward, exhausted. My fiancé, however, quickly rushed forward and caught me in his arms.
Whoa! I got you. Are you okay?
I just killed a bunch of tiny men. I think I am great. What? Where? I looked up to see Damien staring down at me with worry and panic in his expression. We were safe for the moment, so I merely smiled up at him with a nod. I'm fine. I promise to protect you, because I am the main BAE now, like you protect me. Damien softly smiled and hugged me to him, pressing his head into my shoulder.
I love you so much.
Oh, I love you too.
I hugged him back, feeling relief as that we had finally arrived at the castle and were about to rush inside. As we slowly pulled away, Damien lifted me up and helped me to my feet.
Will you be okay?
I don't think this is a time for a piggyback ride. I nodded, shaking off the exhaustion in my mind. I was ready to end this. I looked up at the castle gates and felt a rush of determination run through me. Let's finish this. With that, Damien and I rushed forward into the castle. The final battle had begun. The castle halls were grim and dark, sending shivers through me as Damien and I ran through them towards the sound of the battle. All across the ground were bodies of slaughtered imps and soldiers, most likely dead by Diana's hands. As we finally arrived in the throne room, Damien held out his arm to stop me and protect me from the battle waging within. Oh, it's great to be here again. You look different. You look nice. Diana and the Demon Lord were in some sort of energy deadlock, with a bolt of red energy streaming from the Demon Lord's hand and colliding with a purple flame that came from Diana's. Okay, just imagine, like, I think it was Harry Potter and that, I cannot remember the name for the life of me. The Goblet of Fire. Remember, think of the ending battle with him and Voldemort. That's pretty much what they're doing. The two energies pressed against one another, unrelenting in their violent crash as each stream of energy tried to obtain dominance over the other. The Demon Lord and Diana were equally matched. This is very loud.
This world will bow to me!
Give me 1 second to just turn that down. goodness, there we go.
Over my dead body!
Don't say that, don't cheat yourself!
Rearrange!
A burst of red energy pulsed through the Demon Lord's body, intensifying his bolt of lightning in the deadlock and forcing Diana to step back from the sheer force of it. Despite this, Diana pressed back, regaining her momentum in her ground. Damien and I remained still and quiet, watching the... I like how Diana's like, I don't even care. Watching the bout, Damien was meant to be backup in case something happened to Diana, and thankfully she didn't necessarily need help for now. At least it didn't look like it. Maybe Damien wouldn't have to step in after all. Diana shut her eyes and seemed to focus her energy, large black and purple flames slowly crawling around her body into a threatening aura as the power behind her energy stream increased and began to push back hard against the Demon Lord. As Diana opened her eyes, I gasped at the... as they revealed themselves to be completely covered in gold. Grrr! For a moment, the Demon Lord seemed to struggle maintaining his place, stepping back to try and remain upright at the harsh push Diana was throwing his way. However, as he turned his body, the Demon Lord spotted me and Damien at the entrance of the hall, and a smirk around his face.
Oh, uninvited guests!
Aw! Diana suddenly turned her head our way, surprised at the acknowledgement, which caused her momentum to falter a bit. Taking the chance, the Demon Lord released another pulse of energy at Diana, forcing her to bend back a bit and stumble on her feet. Diana's eyes returned to normal as she raised her other hand to assist in the stream of energy from her end of the deadlock, attempting to push forward again and regain her place. The Demon Lord, however, laughed.
It's useless!
You're useless. Goodness! With a final push, the Demon Lord let out an edgy snarl and forced his energy forward, causing Diana to slam back against the far pillar, losing concentration in her attack. Smirking evilly, the Demon Lord took the chance and shot a bullet of red lightning at Diana, electrocuting her. Well, that didn't work. Diana, no! Damien growled and stepped forward, but through her torture, Diana turned her head and glared hard at Damien, making him freeze in place.
Not your turn!
Fine! Despite being covered in red-tinted bolts of lightning, Diana began to pick up, focus her energy again, and form a deep purple aura around herself, letting the Demon Lord Lord's attack bounce around her new barrier. Whew. With a breath, Diana let her energy pulse out, dissolving the Demon Lord's attack. In a shot of burst of purple flames in retaliation, her flames slammed themselves into the Demon Lord's chest, punting him back towards the pillar opposite of hers. I could see the light in Diana's eyes flicker from the red to gold as she locked eyes with the Demon Lord. Something began to burn beneath her murderous gaze, as if her simple stare was powerful enough to burn through the most courageous of hearts. However, the smirk plastered on the Demon Lord's face made my body shiver at the sight. He was nowhere near phased from Diana's glare. In fact, he seemed to find it amusing from the look in her eyes.
So, the Rebel Queen is protecting the mistake. How pathetic.
You're pathetic.
The only mistake that lives in this world is you.
The echo of the Demon Lord's laughter bounced through the halls with an unforgiving reverb, invading my ears and pounding against my mind. I could feel his dark energy pass through his voice and shake my soul. This wasn't a nightmare or a vision. The Demon Lord was right in front of me, and he was and his presence was terrifying. Diana and the Demon Lord began to circle one another, with Diana moving to stand in front of us while the Demon Lord positioned himself in front of his throne at the foot of the dais. I don't know what that is. However, I could feel the anxiousness in Damien's arms as I held it to me, keeping him in place. He wanted to fight the Demon Lord, but Diana wasn't letting him, and it was bothering him to no end.
Let me help.
I don't need help.
Excuse me. With that go away, bug. With that answer, Diana sprinted forward, summoning her wings and shooting herself like a bullet towards the Demon Lord. As she passed the midpoint of the room, Diana formed her saber in her hands and swung it at the Demon Lord. To her just as the Demon Lord... Stop with the sound effects! I can't read! The Demon Lord parried with ease with his own sword, knocking her saber back and swinging it to swinging it to get a slice at her. The battle became a quick slam of dodges and parries from the Demon Lord and Diana, the sound of steel clanging violently in the air. It became a challenge, still keeping Damien near. I could feel the anger and need for the battle in his tense muscles, ushering me to squeeze it and pull him towards me cautiously. He obeyed, but who knew how long he would? What caused me to look away from Damien was the sound of Diana crying out in pain. I watched as Diana's body flew across the room. It's like, whoa, when'd she get there? Flew across the room and slammed itself into a nearby wall, part of the balcony above it collapsing and crumbling to the top of her. I could almost hear bones breaking from the rocks that had fallen on her. Diana, no! The ship! I could see Diana digging her way through the rubble, her hand clawing out of an opening in desperation to pull herself out. However, Damien took the chance to march towards the Demon Lord, ready to take up a fight. I'm gonna beat you! I don't care what you say! Really? That's pretty much what I see here. That's what I see. Seeing his new opponent, the Demon Lord chuckled darkly and brandished his sword, pointing it at Damien in a taunt.
So, you've come to try and stop me? You're as foolish as I remember.
You know nothing about me.
I may not, but I remember all about your mother.
Oh, don't you bring my mother into this! That sparked the flare in Damien's rage. I almost said the Damien's. Damien swiped his hands into his pocket and pulled out the gem Diana had given him. From the grip he had on it, I was surprised it didn't smash between his fingers. However, before Damien could step forward, a flash of purple zipped across the room and slammed it into the Demon Lord's body, shoving him to a pillar and successfully destroying it with his body.
I'm not done with you yet!
That anger, though! The room began to slowly shape into a reflection of my nightmare, with rubble and stone littering the ground. Diana floated in the air on her wings, but I could tell that her leg was at least a leg, and at least the rib was broken, making her curl over herself from the pain. Diana kept glaring at the Demon Lord, however, gritting her teeth through the pain and forming her saber once again in her hand. As only a couple fingers and her thumb managed to wrap around the handle, I could tell that her hand was also injured.
You'll have to kill me first before I let you get away.
To see Diana continue to fight was remarkable, but I knew very well that she wasn't going to last long. One more avalanche of rubble on her would end her. The Demon Lord rose from the pile of stone that had fallen on him, grinning despite the blood rushing down his forehead.
Then let me finish the job!
With a cackle, the Demon Lord let his red energy pulse around him, making the rubble around him practically disintegrate before he lunged forward and slammed his sword into hers, shooing them both towards the opposite end of the throne room. Dan and the Demon Lord returned to their clashing of steel as Damien only fumed at the bout. My instincts screamed at me to pull him back and calm him down, but was I in the place to stop him? Give me 1 second. Okay, so it doesn't really matter what I choose. I was just checking the endings to make sure I don't... Thank you. To make sure I don't screw up somehow, so I guess it doesn't matter. So I think... I'm just gonna let him attack. He deserves this, dude. Damon had every right to be angry. He had every right to join the fight. Who was I to stop him? The faster we ended the Demon Lord, the better. I stepped back, letting Damien grasp onto the gem for a moment before quickly rushing forward, crushing it in his hand as he brought it up to his fist to swing a punch at the Demon Lord.
Out of my way!
As Damien got closer, however, the Demon Lord jetted his foot out, slamming it into Damien's chest and sending him flying back towards the room entrance. He landed hard against the wall and fell to the ground, stunned momentarily from the impact. Damien! I rushed over to Damien, panicked at the event and sliding to kneel at Damien's side. He gritted his teeth and coughed, trying to catch himself as he slowly began to stand. The Demon Lord, however, was not so patient. The Demon Lord let a pulse of red energy slam into Damien's body, forcing Diana's body, so many names starting with D. Diana's body forcing her back before charging head-on towards me and Damien, sword positioned at his side to impale his son into the wall. Damien managed to stand, still curled over in the lack of air to his lungs, but glared hard as the Demon Lord quickly diminished the distance between himself and us. I had no energy to defend him. I felt myself naturally step in front of Damien, wanting so much to protect him. However, I couldn't help but see my life flash for a moment before my eyes. Was this the end?
No!
Even the game just kicked me out. Jeez. Oh, sorry. With her final shout, Diana rushed between us and became the victim of the Demon Lord's blade. As it ran through her body and out of her back, the purple taint that marked her skin almost shattered around the wound like broken armor. Diana? Diana looked back over her shoulder and glared hard at Damien, shuddering as the blade rested in her belly.
You should have waited your turn.
No! I don't want Diana to die. I'm gonna check something. You hold on, I'm gonna check something. There's no way in hell I'm letting Diana die. Shut up! Not after everything we've been through. Damien, calm your crap. I had to force Damien to accept Diana handling the fight. If he interfered, then Diana might attack him as well, just from her adrenaline rush. I grabbed Damien's hand and pulled him back to me, needing to set him straight. As he looked at me, I could see the need for revenge burning in his eyes. I instantly felt bad, but I knew better than to let him rampage. Come on. I insisted and pulled Damien back towards the entrance of the hall, giving Diana and the Demon Lord space to fight. Damien reluctantly followed, not allowing the anger in his eyes to die as he stared and pinned his gaze on the fight. The battle intensified as we settled back in our place. Dana seemed to match equally to her opponent as the fight waged violently between them. Red lightning and purple flames sparked between their weapons, lighting the room in like fireworks. As Diana's saber flew out of her hands and clattered on the floor, she brought her arms up, and to my surprise began to use her forearms to defend herself from the Demon Lord's blades. How was that possible? I would never know. But his blade would merely clang against the purple taint on Diana's skin, like she was wearing some sort of armor. Perhaps her demon markings protected her. Regardless, Diana defended herself as much as she could until she was met with a kick to the chest, sending her flying back into the pillar and breaking it apart with her body. Her body was completely covered in rubble, unmoving and unwavering from the hit. Diana, please don't die. I just reloaded to save you. The Demon Lord finally looked back to Damien, tongue darting out to lick his blade as his smirk grew.
Your turn. Mistake.
You're a mistake. Damien snarled as he finally settled himself, ready to take on his father, not only for the world and for his mother, but for Diana as well. Damien's body pulsed and caused him to kneel over slightly from the burst of power in his chest. With a hiss, Damien growled as his body began to shift. His clothes slowly vanished, and black markings began to crawl across Damien's skin. I thought I got an achievement, it was just somebody getting on the game. As Damien's horn reformed on his head, the air began to shift to one extreme cold. Something about Damien began to pulse with dark energy, one I had not seen from him even before he lost his powers. As Damien finally locked eyes with the Demon Lord, a flash of black washed over his gaze, sending a vibrant of fear down my back.
Let's...
Hello! Nice! I am happy! I am very, very happy to see this. You get him! Get him! In a show of power, the Demon Lord let out a snarl and charged forward with a sword. Damien, however, summoned a large, invisible burst of energy, pushing the Demon Lord back. The Demon Lord fell back and tumbled back onto his feet after skidding across the marble with a snarl. I had to cover my face with my hands to block the gust of wind that followed, almost feeling myself slide across the floor on my heels from the wave. Damien was billowing with energy, and it definitely showed. With a look of cold thirst from murder in his eyes, Damien lifted his head and raised his arms to his side in a similar fashion to the seconds before him. The black markings on Damien's back began to twist and turn, slowly pulling themselves off his skin and forming a set of wings. Staring at them, they were surprisingly much larger than Diana's. They shuddered and flapped themselves through the air, pushing a gust of wind forward in taunting gesture as the Demon Lord. As the Demon Lord began to stand, Damien brought his hands in front of him and formed a large rod of black mist in his hands. It quickly solidified in his grip, and it began to gleam brightly as one end began to protrude a curve into the end of a scythe. I knew that the gem would intensify Damien's power, but how much did it strengthen? The Demon Lord measured Damien with his eyes, glaring hard and gripping his sword tighter in both anger and a dash of surprise.
How did you get this much power?
Magic!
I don't answer to scum like you.
With that reply, Damien swooped forward and swung his scythe back to reap through the Demon Lord like a Grim Reaper. Despite the Demon Lord being able to parry the attack with his blade, the Demon Lord found himself skidding across the floor from the force of Damien's attack. Damien became relentless and continued to swing and slam his scythe blade into the Demon Lord's sword. The heavy slamming of steel beating on steel boomed through the room as Damien began to push the Demon Lord back towards his throne. Finally, the Demon Lord, who was knocked back onto his throne, stunned momentarily as Damien pulled his scythe back, ready to decapitate his enemy once and for all. Unfortunately, the blade met with the Demon Lord's sword at the last minute, making me grimace in aggravation. I wanted this to end. I wanted the Demon Lord to fall already. This dance of death had gone on for too long, and there was no reason for this battle to prolong itself any further. The Demon Lord was clinging to his last moments, and every part of me wished he would give up. Damien was more powerful than him. This fight would eventually be over. Damien pressed his body into the scythe, pushing it against the Demon Lord.
Give up.
You better give up, because this rating is killing me.
Trying to scare me, boy? Let me show you how it's done!
Distracted by the deadlock, Damien was suddenly kicked back through the air, sent tumbling in surprise as the Demon Lord rose back onto his feet and locked eyes with me. A wave of fear shot through me, and I was locked, frozen in place. I I attempted to break free, mentally commanding every part of my body to move or do something to stop him, but no muscle in my body obeyed. Damien quickly tumbled back onto his feet, burning his gaze into the Demon Lord, before looking back to me and seeing what he was doing to me.
Glad boy! I'm setting her free from the demon world!
Meaning? With a static howl, a red bolt of lightning rammed itself into the ceiling, causing a large rock above me to shatter off the structure and plummet towards me. Diana, no! The boulder oh, wait, where'd Diana come from? I thought she was dead. The boulder quickly impacted my, back. It wasn't heavy enough to completely crush me against the marble, but I could tell I had broken a rib or two. However, I felt a body pressed against me, burying the boulder from completely smashing beneath me. I looked up to see a familiar face, wincing in pain, now embedded in her shoulder and arms. Diana? Despite being battered and bloody, Diana gripped the boulder, pressing most of its weight off me and taking it off herself, making sure my injuries were limited, just broken bones. Diana growled and pushed the boulder off of us, at last releasing a pained huff air as she looked at me concerned.
Are you alright?
I'm okay. I can only nod, astonished at the turn of events. Diana was alive. How was that possible? Staring at her, I could tell she was near death's door, but she wasn't going down without the Demon Lord going down first. Her wings were pressed hard against her back, seemingly broken, but as she lifted me back up, a hum of purple energy rushed through Diana's body and forced her wings to flex out, snapping them in place once more.
This battle isn't over. Not by a long shot.
The pair of us looked over at the Demon Lord, seeing him emotionally seethe at the sight of us.
Just don't know when to die, do you?
We should be saying that to you! Diana smirked and stepped forward, holding her hand back toward me and forming a large purple barrier around me.
We've got unfinished business to take care of first. Right, Damien?
With an angered nod, Damien stood, gripping his scythe while Diana formed her saber in her hand, materializing a wrap around her hand and the handle to keep it in her grip.
It's over, you bastard.
Baring his teeth, the Demon Lord gripped his sword and stepped down from the whatever that is, dais, to meet Damien and Diana halfway.
I will slaughter you both!
A violent shudder ran up my spine as his words before Damien and Diana vaulted forward, slamming the weapons into the Demon Lord's parrying sword. At the collision, a bright flash of red, purple, and black energy sparked and lit the room like a large firework. I moved to the edge of the barrier, trying to watch from the safety of the spell around me as Damien and Diana slowly began to beat down the Demon Lord's defense. The spark between their clash blind Demon Lords. I stretched my mouth out a little bit. No amount of bravado could save the Demon Lord now. The room slowly began to crumble, just from the heavy sound waves of their fighting, causing the rock upon rubble to fall into the marble, almost like hail. This time, Damien was nowhere near defenseless. Damien would escape with me, and the Demon Lord would die here alone. I felt confidence run through me at the idea Damien could do this. Tired of the steel battle, Diana swooped around the Demon Lord and slashed at the back of his knees, forcing him to fall forward and drop his sword from the impact.
Enough! End this!
With a large breath of mercy, Damien raised his scythe back, taking aim at his target.
Father.
A flash of black energy swept through the room as Damien swung his scythe down and through the neck of the Demon Lord. For a moment, nothing seemed to have occurred. It wasn't until a large line appeared on the Demon Lord's neck and his eyes began to glaze over that I realized what had happened. In an angled cut, not perfect by any means, the Demon Lord's head slid off his shoulders and tumbled into the marble floor, rolling until it stopped on the edge of one of his horns. From this newly opened neck, black and red blood began to gush out and drain his body as the body fell forward. The sound of his body hitting the ground echoed through the chamber, solidifying the death of his father. The battle had been won at last. I could finally breathe. The realization of the entire event coursed through me like a wave as a weight lifted itself from my heart. The curse, I knew that it had been lifted at last. I was free to go home. I began drowning in feelings of joy and relief, happy that it was all over and overwhelmed by everything that had happened. As the scythe beside me... There's a scythe beside you? Faded alongside the barrier around me, Damien slowly turned to face me, hearing my slowly growing cries of joy. It was almost overwhelming. We won! We really won! Hurrah! And Noku's back to normal. Damien slowly started to walk towards me, his form fading from the demon he got the chance to be. the human he actually was. His clothes slowly materialized around his body, but the bruises of soot and battle remained as a reminder of what had happened. Just looking into his eyes, I could see the satisfaction of his deeds blossom in his gaze. He stared at me, happy to see me, and I felt myself grin from ear to ear at him. I wasn't being pulled away from him, nor was he dead. Damien and I were together, and we were okay. And Diana's alive. Score. Damien finally stopped in front of me and wrapped his arms around me, letting everything sink in within my embrace as I buried my face into his shoulder. I was tired of seeing the death around me now. All I wanted was to go home. You did it, bud.
Yeah. We can go home now.
I looked up at him, feeling the ache of the lost adrenaline in my system course through me as I clung to him. The war for us was over. At last. Diana, however, collapsed onto the ground and on the dais of the throne, panting for air as she stared at the pair of us in exhaustion. Before she could finish her sentence, Sado! She's trying to say Sado! Oh no! Then his eyes rolled into the back of her head as she completely passed out on the ground. She passed out, right? She's not dead! She's not dead, right? In a panicked rush, I thrust my hand out towards her. Sado! Come here now! In a flash of light, Sado's form materialized and looked around, surprised at the summoning. His eyes landed on the passed-out Diana. He slammed down onto his knees and cradled her in his arms, relieved to see her breathing. He hugged her to his chest, giving her his energy. Thank God, she's okay. I like how the person I worry about the most is Diana. Like, I don't care about you, I don't care about me, as long as Diana and Sado are alright, we're good. I clung to Damien, now mentally wiped out. Who knew the end of the battle was so exhausting? I had fought with Lisette once before, but it was nowhere near as intense. Totally forgot about Lisette. Oh, that bitch. As intense as this fight was, not by a long shot. Damien and I looked at each other, both of us fearing the lack of energy from the battle attempt to consume our bodies, before leaning into one another for a well-deserved rest. One thing was for certain, the chapter of my story had come to an end. It was over. The war was finally over. As the smoke cleared, we were victorious. The soldiers left standing were soldiers left standing were the ones to cheer in victory. The sky became littered with the howls and cries of joyful and happy. The tyranny of the Demon Lord had ended. But what now? Home was now possible. We could go back to the human world and we could live our lives as we wanted. It was something I desperately wanted, and yet my body was not ready to make the journey just yet. We had to celebrate the success of the war, after all. As the full moon rose over Lilith Castle towards the dawn, the entirety of the demon world celebrated with endless drinks and food, laughter and dancing. It was so unreal, but the courtyard that I could see was filled with smiles and happy faces. We had stayed for one more night, traveling back to the castle, to rest and return home as healthy as we could be. After all, we had just gone through a war. One more night in the demon world wasn't going to hurt us. While the majority of the rebellion danced in the courtyard, I remained with the incubi and the rebel leaders, who were all in the royal hall having their own celebration. Drinks were shared and battle stories were exchanged, making some laugh and others roll their eyes. I found myself intrigued at the stories the sergeant had told about from the front line. As I looked at Diana, however, she simply kept quiet with a small smile on her face. She looked at the incubi and the rebel leaders in silence before walking away from the little party we had. As if she knew I was staring at her, Diana looked over at me and slightly gestured with her head for me to follow. I followed, curious as to where she was going. I made sure to remain quiet as I separated from the rest of the group and followed her out of the room into the hall. The entire journey, Diana didn't speak a word. Even Sado didn't follow her, most likely being told that she wanted to speak with me alone. Diana led me through the castle, up a couple sets of stairs, into what looked like to be a royal bedroom with a balcony. Was this a guest room? It was untouched, and I could smell the very faint scent of dust. Why'd she bring me here? Diana stepped into the room, using her magic to ignite the candelabras, and air out the room by opening the balcony window before I could ask. However, Diana finally spoke up.
I have to thank you, dear.
You're welcome. For what?
For aiding us in this war. We've been fighting the Demon Lord for so long. We thought the war would never end. As terrible as the circumstance was, if you hadn't been summoned here, we probably would have still been fighting now.
Diana walked to the balcony and leaned against the railing, staring into the dark night sky. The light from the room illuminated her form as she gazed at the stars. Despite the situation around us, the air seemed calm with the faint echo of celebrations whispering through the night. I walked over and stood beside her, leaning against the balcony, and looked at Diana as she smiled and let out a chuckle.
To be very honest, I didn't expect to ever see you again. After I took your energy that night, I vowed to never deal with humans again. No clairvoyance could have told me about you coming into play in this war.
I wasn't exactly counting on coming here. But at least I got to help bring peace. Diana smiled, nodding to me. I really was glad to help bring peace to the world. It wasn't out of pride or vanity. It was a matter of helping people clearly in need.
We owe you much thanks.
Yes, you do. You owe me a freaking apple is what you owe me. I'll accept your thanks when I finally get married.
Oh, I had almost forgotten.
Yeah. I tilted my head at her. Did something just vibrate? Something just vibrated and I don't know what it was. I tilted my head at her. What was she talking about? Diana lifted one of her hands toward the sky and waved her hand through the air, making a soft purple mist glow around her fingers. Within seconds, the mist morphed and formed itself into a lavender-colored lily. Resting peacefully between Diana's fingers, she brought it down and presented it to me with kind gaze.
A gift, my dear.
A gift? I slowly took the flower out of Diana's hands and inspected it visually. It was light, but I could feel a soft glow of magic emanating from its stem and the petals. The bloom reminded me of a human world lily, but something about it seemed otherworldly.
A flower known only to demons of Lilith. We call it the Flower of Lilith.
Of course you do.
Because these
Of course you
flowers
do.
were said to have been created when Lilith first appeared in the abyssal plains.
I stared at Diana, not understanding why she was giving me such a gift. She tugged at my confusion and leaned against the railing, continuing her explanation.
It is also a flower we succubi use when we marry.
Use? What do you mean? Did you just freeze something? Diana chuckled again before she gently took the flower from my hands and tucked it behind my ear. As it settled against my ear, I felt mist circle my head and form a flower crown of lavender lilies. The way Diana looked at me made me feel like I was in my bridal wear already.
A human you may be, but Lilith would have been proud to see you marrying one of her own. These flowers represent her blessing, and may only crown the worthy.
I felt a blush run across my cheeks. This was a blessing? I slowly reached up and ran my finger along the flower crown adorning my head, feeling the soft petals against my fingertips. They were almost pulsing with energy. I felt both flattered and honored that a simple flower felt that was worthy enough to crown my head. Diana let out a sigh and looked back to the sky, making me do the same. One would have expected the sky to be full of smoke or smell of war aftermath, but the sky was clear and fresh air drifted through my nose as I inhaled. I was indeed in another world, and tonight was my last night in it.
Well, you did it! Congratulations! You've made it to the end of your story. I have to say, I am very surprised at how it turned out.
High five, Kit! Thanks!
Nevertheless, I'm glad things worked out in the end, whether it was for the better or otherwise. Despite everything Damien went through, it was all worth it to obtain his humanity and to be truly happy. Don't you think?
Giggity.
He got his revenge for his mother, and both of you saved the demon world. I definitely would put that down as successes.
I shall.
Anyways, you've been through a lot, so why don't we skip to... Huh? You want to know what happened after the war?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I guess I could tell you.
Thank you.
After the war was finished, the entire rebellion celebrated. Word spread far and wide about the rebellion's success, and soon every kingdom in the abyssal plains had become united with the new authority. You would think demons would be more hostile towards each other, being demons and all, but the threat of the demon lord was what brought the entire world together. The entire world united under one banner, the Lilith Crest. Diana became the sovereign of the entire plane, accepted and loved by practically everyone because of her devotion to the world and her bravery in the war.
Then to think Diana was a real bitch in the first game.
And, thanks to you, she was finally able to find true love in the form of a tainted Nephilim named Sarah.
Sarah!
Oh, crap! I shouldn't have let that one slip. Oops.
Your fault.
Anyway, when they bound their souls together in marriage, he became king of the demon world. However, it was just a title to him. The real power belonged to Diana.
But he's her king.
Diana became one of the most beloved rulers in all of demon world history. Her natural heart of gold led her to lead the world to a prosperous future, one filled with peace and happiness.
Okay, if somebody told me when I was playing the first game and I had no idea about the second game, if somebody told me that Diana had a heart of gold, I would have laughed in their face!
The other rebel leaders supported her, eventually changing the caste system of the world and slowly working their way towards a plane as equal and peaceful as it could be. Diana had her suspicions, of course, as any monarch would, but if they had any sort of bad thoughts about her before, they certainly didn't during the recreation of the world. And I believe that is everything that happened after, well, except for your story anyway.
Please, just tell me what the frig happened.
Damien and you, both completely human now, return home and set up once more for your wedding. Take 2. Huh? How do I know? Well, I have my ways. Maybe you should check it out.
Can I? I want to see my wedding. It took a while to get everything back in order, but with the help of Damien's brothers and their wives, we were able to finally have the wedding Damien and I dreamed of. Everything was organized to a T, and it was indeed perfect. The revels of the ceremony and reception still shook through me even through the honeymoon. Wink. It was so unreal. I was married to the love of my life, and we were about to live our lives together forever. I could go on about the wedding and the honeymoon, but honestly, after the war, I was just concerned with living my life afterwards. Our lives escalated to new heights after we officially became husband and wife. Damien finally settled on what he wanted to do, dedicated himself to writing small stories for children. Reading to him became a passion. Drawing him towards teaching children to learn before they had gotten older. It was beautiful, to say the least. As for me, I began to go through my own successes in life, dedicating myself to become exactly what I wanted to be. After all, Damien was dedicated to his work and end goal. Put myself in the amount of work, and as I did in the demon world, then I was going to be okay. However, there were never a day that went by that I didn't think about what was happening in the Abyssal Plains. It was a heavy chapter in my life, one that tested the love between me and Damien. While the struggle was rough, Damien was finally able to realize his dream and become human. Even more so, he was able to take down his father and gain revenge, not only for his mother, but for what the Demon Lord had done to him as a child. I was so proud of him that I was even more proud to call him mine. This change affected us both, and who knew what the future had in store now. Still, I was confident that we would get through it and stay together no matter what came our way. Demon, devil, whatever. It didn't matter to us. We were unstoppable together. A moment to myself was all I took to remember everything that went on during my time in the Abyssal Plains. It was a heavy part of my life and a chapter I would never forget as long as I lived. We're still in the same house, but who would want to leave a mansion? I sat in bed waiting for Damien to return from his visit to the Anderson Toy Company. He wanted to pitch his next book idea to his brother and hopefully get some funding for it for art and publishing, but I had high hopes for it regardless. It was boring, however, just waiting. I lit out a sigh and slid off the bed, standing and stretching. What to do? Oh, I miss this room. I began to let my feet guide me through the house, wanting something to take my attention. As I let my mind wander, I couldn't help remembering the secret alcove the house had. Oh, right, where Damien confesses love to me. Shh. Go away, Sky. I wondered, was it still there? Why wouldn't it be? I walked through my memory, trying to find the secret passage once again. With my luck, I managed to find it and walk through it, leaving the passageway... I'm lisping now. Leaving the passageway open for Damien to find me later in case I stuck around for the spring for long. We walked through the dark passage and eventually entered the magical space my grandfather created for the mansion, hiding a beautiful hot spring. The steam was just as heavy as it was when I was last in the space, making me smile and let out a relaxing sigh. A moment in the spring was well worth everything I'd gone through. I stripped down and slowly eased myself into the spring, feeling the water slowly drain my aches and stress away the lower I slid myself. As I finally sat down, another sigh couldn't stop itself from escaping me, taking in the fresh air and slight tint of flowers emanating in the air. My thoughts simply melted away, letting me simply sit back against the edge of the hot spring and indulge in the warmth around my body. The only thing that would have made my experience perfect was Damon beside me to cuddle against. As if fate answered my selfish prayer, my thoughts were broken by the sound of slowly approaching footsteps, making me look over with a smile as I spotted familiar purple and blue eyes.
Hey! Enjoying the spring?
Yes, sir. Damon slowly began to walk towards me, stripping out of his clothes, to join me, as I smiled and nodded, lying back against the edge of the spring lazily. The water's so good, you're missing out, dude. Oh, you're sweet. You're sweet. You're sweet. Damien chuckled before finally joining me and sitting beside me, and wrapping his arms around me. I giggled in return, nuzzling into his shoulder and chest. The water may have been warm, but feeling Damien against me made me feel just right. Damien nuzzled my head with his and kissed over my shoulder gently. How's the meeting with James?
It went good. I got the funding.
Well, that's good. I pulled away, suddenly excited for Damien. He grinned at me, nodding and affirming his words with a happy expression. That's awesome! Congratulations! Damien laughed and gently kissed me before pulling me into a hug, wrapping his arms fully around me and holding me close. I cuddled into an embrace, waves of joy practically emanating from us. This was the start of Damien's future, and I would be standing beside him, eager to see him grow and become a successful person he wanted to be. Damien softly kissed my cheek and let out a sigh, relaxing his embrace, but not letting me go.
You are such an inspiration to me.
I don't know what I did, but alright. Damien.
It's true. You've supported me and been with me ever since we met. You did everything to protect me and give me everything I could have ever wanted.
Damien slightly pulled away, staring into my eyes, his own full of love and passion that glimmered in the light of the magically made moon above us.
How did I ever come to deserve you?
Good question. How did you ever come to be the first in this playthrough? I smiled sweetly and cupped Damien's cheek, feeling him nuzzle into my palm. As I kissed his cheek softly, I knew very well that our relationship came from us deserving each other. I loved him and he loved me. It was all that mattered in the end. I should be asking the same thing, but I know that we perfectly deserve each other. I felt like I was in some sort of blissful dream, staring into Damien's eyes as he became lost in my mind. Did I say lost my mind? I don't know. I love you.
I love you too.
No!
I couldn't stop my smile from growing before leaning in and kissing Damien, lovingly, feeling him kiss back with the same amount of love and passion I had. Our lives would lead us to a blissful future, one full of adventure, joy, and endless waves of affection for one another. He obtained his dream and I had obtained mine. And that was my perfect happy ever after. Yay! Ooh, the ending's gonna be so pretty, I can't wait. I'm actually gonna mute my microphone, so here we go.
Within the night, bathing in the firelight, a memory echoed within my heart. I called to you, lost and wondering what to do. You found me and you promised that we'd never be apart. I always knew I would find my way to you. The feeling deep within burns every day. What do you see Don't make me wait for you. I'll show you what to do. There's a place beyond where we can be free. Let's fly, my love. We'll reach the sky above. We'll soar like eagles through the breeze. I'll fly so high with ease. Don't make me wait for you. I'll show you what to do. There's a place beyond where we can be free. Just you and me.
Is that a question mark? Don't you dare throw a third game my way. Don't you dare. I swear I'll have to beat your butts. There are bloopers. Oh, no, they're not. It's not updated yet. Uh-oh. Oop, there's a da-da-da. Hi. Hey, you have my name. Awesome. Opening trailer. Let's look at the gallery. Did we miss anything? Guys, we missed a thing. We missed a thingy thing. But don't worry. Don't worry. It's not a big deal. It's not a big just one. Hi Kay. How you doing? Doing good? Great. Oh, Eric, I can't wait. Alright. So that's the end of Seduce Me. Oh, I want to click back, and you're kind of in my way. You're just... There you go. That's the end of Seduce Me to the Demon World, Damien's route. And if you want, vote for whoever you want next. I'd like to see that. Whoever you want next, that's not Diana, because Diana's always last. That's how it's going to go. So vote for who you want to see next. Who we're going to fight beside next. Meh. I'm terrible at these endings, so I just feel so heartbroken that it's over, but I'm really, really happy that's over at the same time. Alright, well, I'll see you guys in the next route.